for joining us today. We kind of went through the first slide, just kind of asking everybody where you're from. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're excited to hear from you. We do host classes similar to this every week. They range from talking with attorneys to talking with realtors to lenders and a lot of other things. So we're trying to bring as much quality and content as we can to the local market. When it's applicable, we'll bring people in from other areas. Virtually right now, we are still not in our weekly classes back to in-person yet. Let me see how to click. There we go. Paul, do you want to talk about you?
You can tell them.
Okay, so Paul got started in real estate in 2003 kind of by accident. He purchased up a couple of pieces of land and realized that he could sell them without putting any money into them, very luckily. So he did wholesaling for land, and then right before the recession, he started wholesaling residential and rehabbing. We love getting in the conversation of, how much is a rehab going to cost and what is the best way to do it. So Paul actually started a rehab management company because he got tired of having that argument. In the last year, he did over 40 wholesale transactions. This year, we did not update this slide because I know that you've done more than 8 wholesale deals so far.
I'm about 23 at the moment without the buying hold.
So you guys can see kind of his numbers. There's, like we talked about earlier, there are a lot of deals to be had in this area. It's all about finding them though. Like we talked about, there's a lot of wholesalers, and the best way to build this, and one thing that you'll hear Paul reiterate throughout this presentation, is it's all about putting out quality content when you build relationships with your buyers or investors, or if you're the one looking to do it, putting out a quality rehab, putting tenants in quality homes, not just making a dime, a one and done kind of thing. Did I miss anything on all that, Paul?
Nope. No, a lot of wholesalers, what they do is they do the round robin auction, and then you end up paying because you like the property. There's not many properties. But then, like if you come in, you don't know the market, you think the wholesaler's telling you the truth. Next thing you know, the deal is not what it was. You break even, or maybe even lose money, or maybe just make $10,000. It's a lot of work to do it. You're not going to go buy a deal from that person again to where you're going to be happy. So I've been able to do my business to where I don't really advertise much to send the deals out anymore. I do send deals out mostly for the students, but all my deals, my buyers are asking me what I have before I even put it out in the market. So that's the big difference, where I've been able to build long-term relationships with them that, they'll tell me what they have to work with this week or next week and just send them the deal right away.
Yeah, so a little bit about myself. I have been in the business for about 2 years. My first year, I was part of 10 different transactions. I mainly focus on wholesaling and working with other people, helping learn from my mistakes, because I definitely made a few of them. I am also a licensed realtor and a loan originator. I do more with the loans than the realtor side of the business. I work with hard money, private money, conventional. There's not really a lot of things that we can't figure out how to make it work. And then I also partner with REI Live, which is what we are in right now, and our monthly meetings, and investor quarters, which is the ones who host the additional classes every week. Oh, sorry guys. There we go. So there are 2 real types of marketing that we're going to talk about. There's broad marketing, so your bandit signs, your t-shirts, like I buy houses on a t-shirt, your car magnets, your flyers in public places. You don't know exactly what's coming back. It's not, I'm going to go target this house because it has overgrown grass, or it needs, it has a blue tarp on the roof, so it needs a roof. It is just very throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping something sticks, which works. And it is a great marketing thing, but you also need to supplement that into some targeted marketing, which is what we are going to talk about and what we're really going to dive into. There's a little bit of a lag between my updating slides. So we're going to talk a lot about targeted marketing and kind of how to find those specific houses.
You want me to take over?
Sure.
So these are the types of deals that I pretty much help coach my students on, and also that I do in my own personal business. Probate, inherited, kind of the same type of lead, but they're a little different, because just because someone inherited doesn't mean someone had to die, where the probate means someone had to die and then you have to go through probate to be able to get clear title on that house to be able to sell or buy. Divorce, we don't focus a lot on, but there are deals out there in it. Evictions, we kind of slowed during COVID because you couldn't do the evictions, but now I believe those will start ramping up to be very good leads. The biggest and most money producer that we're dealing with right now and have been dealing with for a long time is the high equity. More on that is where, you know, you can buy a list that is targeted to 2 2s, 2 1s, 3 2s, and so forth, with, you know, 50, 60, 70, or 100% equity in the property, and put a deal together with the homeowner. My most favorite type of property that I like to do is the driving for dollars, because no matter what list you buy, it doesn't tell you that it's a distressed property or not. You're just hoping that, you know, someone comes back on the other end and says, hey, I'm interested in selling. Tax delinquent are phenomenal deals, but the only downfall is that in Sarasota County, some in Manatee County as well, but the list isn't as big as Sarasota County. But Sarasota County, the list starts out as the 25,000 list count. You have to decipher out of the 25,000 properties that are listed between condo, vacant land, commercial, mobile home, and then single family. Pretty much in our market, my bread and butter is single family. Yes, I've done condos. I don't primarily like them. I have not made good profit margins on them, no matter how cheap I buy them. You have a lot more expenses every month. You have the HOA and all your other fees that are due every single month on the property. So every month it's costing more money than normal. So those ended up eating up your profits in the end. Now I do have guys that love condos and they only buy condos because they only have to do the remodel on the inside only. So everyone's going to have their own cup of butter. I know a lot of the guys in Bradenton, they've only primarily have all switched from single family to only manufactured houses, and they're doing great with them. So everyone's going to have their own niche. It's just, you know, figure out what you like and then focus on that and then become the master of that area. So in our market generally, on the tax delinquent list, you're probably looking at a 25,000 prospects on that master list. That's going to get down to about between 1,000 and 1,200 actual single family houses. So it's not a huge list, but it's a very good list, because once they hit over 2 years in the state of Florida, on that third year, year one tax certificate can be now sent to for tax foreclosure, and they have some motivation to actually want to sell the property. So if you look at the number wise on how many pieces you're mailing off that 1,200 piece count to a $20,000 or $25,000 spread, your margins are huge on those, and you know your dollar amount for the list is very minimal. Pre-foreclosures and short sales and foreclosures, I haven't really focused on in the last 5 or 6 years. Now in the last probably 3-4 months, I've had a lot more pre-foreclosures come our way. And the biggest problem with the pre-foreclosures and short sales is most of the sellers are in denial, and it's a nonstop constant battle to get them to get on board. They say they want to sell, they want to do the short sale, they don't want to have the foreclosure, but then you go through the whole process, you get everything lined up and everything's ready, and you're chasing, and they go MIA for a while. And then 2-3 weeks later, you know, they pop back in like, oh, you know, what's going on? But the last 3 weeks prior to that, you couldn't find them, and you need to get information to the attorney or to the short sale negotiator, and they're not around. So they're good deals. They just are a lot more headache and a lot more process to work. I'm not saying I wouldn't do them, because we do them, but they're a lot more work than, say, someone with a high equity or a probate property. Free and clear, great. Absentee owner really doesn't work that well in our general market, because we have such a high influx on snowbirds. I know in other states, you know, everyone talks about absentee owner, but with the population the way it is in pretty much all of Florida, the snowbird influx kind of overtakes that absentee owner prospect, and it's just not the same type of lead. If you're only buying an absentee owner list, I highly recommend not to waste money sending it out. If you've already sent money, and you have 1,500 people, I would probably stop. Even if you're halfway through, I would stop and kind of switch your list over, because you're going to spend a lot of money on and not get good results. Pretty much most of my deals come from off-market for sale by owners. I'd say 99% of them are off-market for sale by owners. They've either had a cold call touch from our cold call team, or they get a postcard or a letter from us. Other than that, I do have agents now and then they'll call with a deal. They're okay deals. They're not huge margin deals usually. But we do buy deals we'll buy deals from anyone as long as the numbers make sense. But, agents usually are looking for a little more money if they don't put on the MLS.
I'm curious, if anybody's doing marketing a different list, will you throw it in the chat box for us? I'd love to see what you guys are marketing besides that. Paul, do you want to continue with LeadX?
So there's I knew there was a need in the market for it, and I created a company called LeadX. And from that, I have partnered with OnCarrot, PropStream, Podio. I have an easy button Podio free CRM that you can get access to. I partnered with ListSource, so instead of paying 12 cents for leads, we can sell them for 8 cents a lead. I'm not upcharging any of the products. So if you need websites, I'm not upcharging more than OnCarrot. I'm not upcharging more on PropStream. I'm not upcharging any other product. But the difference is if you have an issue with one of your items, you can contact me and I can put you in with a rep that's going to get you handled pretty quickly. One of the owners of PropStream actually does my cold calling on that side. So the stuff that we're putting out is the same as you can get from the general public. But at the end of the day, if you need help or resources, you have me and Catherine to reach out to help you get whatever you need resolved. Also, not many people will be willing to give you a free CRM that's meant for, or it's called customized fully for real estate investing. It's run through Podio. It's called Easy Button. If you don't have one, you can send us a message after the meeting and we can set you up with a free Podio account and get started from there. And we'll go over reasons why you need a CRM and the reasons and the benefits for it. And at the end of the day, I created LeadX because there was a huge need in our general market for it, and it works well. All my deals come from direct mail or from cold calling, and it's all pretty much the same type of leads that everyone else is touching.
Yeah, and we're going to dive into a little bit more in depth for each of these items that we just talked about. So if it's a little bit over you're not sure what CRM is, stuff like that, we're going to talk you through each of those as well as each of the places. And at a later date where you can find more information about all these things if you do have questions about them, okay? So this, like I said, dives into a little bit more of the systems that we use. PropStream is for mail list and skip tracing. They actually have a really great new app. It would be similar to the MLS, but for not agents. So it's a nationwide database. They pull from county records. So it is a little bit delayed on their update times. I believe it updates every night at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that. But you actually have a little bit more information than I do as a realtor on the MLS because those county records. So those off-market deals that you're trying to buy aren't necessarily going to show up on the MLS because they're not on market, of course. You can pull mailing lists from it. You can skip trace inside of it. You can send postcards out through it. We use another source that we'll talk about later on for postcards just because the quantity is higher, so the price is a little bit cheaper. But you have nationwide access. So I know that there's some people on here from Denver or that were working in PA, maybe still are dabbling up there a little bit. You can actually look at those other markets and analyze deals across the board, where I can only, as a realtor with MLS, work in Tampa Bay and Sarasota, Manatee counties.
And that's how I'm using to break into the Colorado market is PropStream. We did have access to MLS, and we compared the two together. The upside with the PropStream compared to MLS is that it doesn't show any off-market sales, so we can't see if an investor came in and bought a home from a home seller directly unless we know that it's sold off-market and go look that up, where PropStream will actually give you that data.
Yeah. You can pull buyers inside of it. There's just so many things that you can do inside of those databases. LeadX, we talked about that. The main thing, if you are interested in getting a high equity list, that's what we use and analyze. Paul's done the work. He's analyzed what works, what you need to pull in here. He's also worked across the United States. So there's not a lot that we don't know how to pull the list for correctly. I know when I first went in and tried to pull the list, it is super confusing and you're paying more. Probates in the state of Florida are actually online, so you can actually go to floridapublicnotices.com and check out those probate leads and pull them yourselves. Tax delinquents you're going to pick up from the tax collector's offices. Have you done, are they still in person or are they doing it virtually now because of COVID?
The tax delinquent lists are usually online. I know Sarasota County and Manatee County are online, and you can download the CSV file. It's just, there's no rhyme or reason on how they're categorized. They're just on there. So you have to learn the legal description and take that to the property appraiser site and dissect it that way. So basically what I do is I hire a VA. I'll give them instructions on like 10 of them how to do it, and then send over the list. I will have them start working on it. I'll go through 100 of their leads. If they're on track for the right information, then I'll have them continue. If not, then I'll try and find another VA that can follow the correct task, because it is very complicated. That's why it's not many people focus on it, because in our area, it's not just, 123 Main Street is the property address that's behind in taxes.
Yeah. Remember, the harder the list is to find, get your hands on, the less people that are doing it. Follow-up is one of the things that most wholesalers don't do, and that extra little bit of legwork. Evictions, I know that I spoke with Jill, which is a local property manager, last week, and she was diving into kind of how evictions are working right now. And we are actually allowed to evict people as long as it is not for COVID related stuff. And there's a whole process. If you are interested in hearing more about that, Jill dove into it for probably 20 minutes last week, and that video is up on our YouTube channel at RAI Live SRQ. Code violations, those are county records, and driving for dollars. If you're going to use PropStream or you need a system like that, the Driving for Dollars app is unbelievable. Like, it tracks you around through Google Maps, and then you can flag homes, you can send things straight out from there, or skip, trace, and smile and dial, all with inside of that. Or you can use Zillow, which is what I use. I know that Todd's on the call. He pens and papers and writes it down. So there's a lot of different ways that you can drive for dollars. The great thing about Driving for Dollars that none of these other lists that we've talked about are going to do is they're not going to tell you that this house is abandoned, or this house doesn't have a tenant in it. This house has overgrown grass and needs a roof. Like, they're not going to be specific on these distressed properties. So Paul kind of talked a little bit about the way that we market. So direct mail, finding one of these titles, addresses, owner contact information, and mailing addresses, and then sending postcards. This is one that the mail house that we use actually created specifically for COVID-19. And there's a few more on here that we have. So this is something similar to what we'll send out as a first or second touch on these properties.
And so far through COVID, I haven't really had any issues going to seller appointments and going through walkthroughs. I had one older person that called, but it wasn't from this COVID postcard, but it was during COVID, beginning of COVID, and she asked because she was older if I could wear a mask, and she had a couple other people come that wear a mask. But other than that, for the most part, I mean, if they're ready to sell, they're ready to sell. So these are some of the other ones that I use, and there's a few other. You can pretty much use any type of marketing you want, but if you're saying, say you're going to send a list out to probates, you're not going to want to send a final notice or an urgent house is wanted to someone that just possibly had a death or lost their mom or dad or brother or sister or something, whatever the situation is. You're going to want to send more of a nicer approach, maybe a simple handwritten postcard or a direct mail letter that's a little more personal. But urgent house is wanted or final notice is going to be great for a code violation or a tax delinquent or even driving for dollars. Those type of deals, you can send them to the high equity, but on probates and inherited, I would really not recommend doing that. If not, you're going to probably have some pretty angry people calling in. These work pretty well for your probates. I've actually switched now from doing this type of piece to probates, and I've switched it to a company letterhead with a just a simple letter saying we're interested in purchasing property in your neighborhood. We see that you do have a probate that just happened, and we'd be interested in helping you through that process. Because a lot of times what happens down here, because it happens so often, is the parents will pass away, and then the kids are out of state, and they can't or don't even know how or where to start the process of the probate, for one, and then the whole steps of the way, and they don't typically have the money to take on another property if there's a mortgage on that property to be able to keep the house afloat out of foreclosure while the house is being probated. So that's where we're able to come in and give them a service that, says, listen, we'll come and help you. We'll pay for the probate. We'll walk you through the process. Here's a price that, does this number come up with what you'd agree with to sell the property? If so, yes. And just help them through the whole process. We're doing one right now in Clearwater that Catherine just got, and that one should have probate started next week. And the guy should already left and went to Alabama about 2 weeks ago, and we have a lockbox with keys on the door.
Yeah.
So
we'll show you that house in a second.
This is how my wholesale business is set up. There's me, there's my wife who helps run the background. I have an office manager that handles the incoming phone calls. Basically, she sets up all the appointments. She helps set up lead generation. We process the lead between her and another guy that I have that does all the follow-ups, and he does after-hour phone calls for follow-ups. And then there's me that I go to the appointment, and I also push to sell the properties as well. And then that's where it comes into where either we're going to wholesale the property, wholesale it, or we're going to keep it for rental. We'll either sell it to an investor or sell it on the MLS for a little bit more money. So just depending on the type of deal and what the margins are. If there's a nice spread on there, we'll go on the MLS and wholesale it. But if there's not, then we'll just sell it to an investor for an assignment fee. I have done a lot of rehabs in the past. So what I've done now is I will sell them off to the investor. I have a crew of guys that work for me full time. I took on one of the guys that has been with me since 2011 and made him a partner of the rehab company. So that way he has more responsibility and it takes it off my hands. And I just feed him the jobs that I sell to the investors. And that way they pretty much have almost a turnkey rehab. You don't hear it too often like you do like turnkey rentals, but it's basically a turnkey rehab. I sell you the house, we rehab the house, and then if you don't have a license or you need a realtor, my wife's an agent, and we do a discount listing and put the property back on the MLS for you. So some people, it's a hands-off experience, and they just sit back and see the whole process happen, and then they sit back and collect the check. So here's the biggest issue with most 99.9% of everyone's business. You generate a lead, you capture the lead, you qualify the lead, you set the appointment. Not everyone is ready to sell the house today. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. It takes a lot of nurturing and a lot of follow-up to get these people to, ready to sell the house. A house sale is one of the most attached emotional pieces of your life, other than maybe a relative that you're going to make a decision to do. So everyone's expecting everyone to go on an appointment and get the contract signed right away. That's not always the case. We've had deals that have taken 2 to 3 years to nurture and follow up with the seller to make them get comfortable and get ready to sell. But then there are some that, we go to the appointment and they're ready to sell right then and there. But the biggest problem with everyone's business is they don't have a CRM. They don't know where the follow-up are. They don't know where their leads are. They don't know their information. They don't remember 6 months ago when they talked to the person and what the last conversation was, and they forget the follow-up. So without having the CRM in place, you don't have all the pieces of the puzzle to help you keep on track and know where you're at. So the biggest bottleneck of everything is the follow-up and negotiations and nurturing that lead until you get the contract signed. Like one of our students, he's on about 3.5 weeks now where the lady told him he was ready to sell immediately because she's coming up for tax foreclosure in, I think it's October, but she hasn't signed the contract now, and now he's almost becoming a therapist for her to help her walk through the process because she lost her husband, and it's just a big mess. So he's got to do a lot of nurturing to get her on board to be able to have that confidence in him to help her get to the next step, because once she sells the house, she's going to have a little bit of money, but she's never done anything like this. She was married for 45 years, and the husband just dropped dead one day from a heart attack. So this is all new to her. She's completely lost. So we talked this morning, and I was helping them get through the nurturing of, getting her help and finding her a place so she'll be able to sell her place so she doesn't lose all her equity. Because I think she I think all her fees and liens and everything are around 45, 50,000, and he's going to give her 80,000, so she'll walk away with 30, and then he'll put some money into the property, and the house is worth about 135. So everyone wants that contract signed, but there's a lot of follow up in between the deals. That's why a lot of wholesalers, they don't. A lot of buyers buy from wholesalers, but they don't understand the fact that you spent the money for marketing, you spent the time going back and forth with the follow-ups, you spent the time going back and forth, out to the house, so the nurturing the seller, and to sell a contract for $2,000-3,000 is just, it's not worth anyone's time, I don't think. I mean, I personally won't do a deal under $8,000 unless it's just a quick referral, just because there's a lot of time and effort and money that goes out on every single lead. So if you're losing leads and you're spending money on marketing, you're losing leads, you spent quite a bit of money that you just throw money out the window without having an actual CRM in place.
Unless you need to take a price cut to keep the deal alive.
Yeah.
That's the only
yeah, like I've taken a price cut. We had a $12,000 deal the day before closing, even though there's no inspection. The buyer had a sewer inspection or sewer tank inspection. The sewer was bad. It was either we give them a $4,500 credit and we still made, I think it was $8,000 on the deal, and we kept the deal alive and we still closed the next day. If not, we would have been in trouble, because at the end of the day, if the buyer doesn't close, yeah, we'll keep a deposit, but I don't want the deposit. I want the whole assignment fee.
Yeah. So why are CRMs important? And CRM stands for Customer Resource Management. So keeping everything organized in that follow-up lead. These are screenshots of the CRM that we use. It is a formatted Podio branch. There are two different versions. There's the free version, which is easy button, which is what Paul talks about earlier. And then you can move up to a fully automated version. I am still on the free version because I can't justify the expense of the automated version when I'm very systematic and organized. I was an accountant in a past life, so I like everything to be square and 2 + 2. I don't need everything to be one click and send a contract type thing. But those are all things that you can utilize and format inside of Podio. It's a really easy system to use.
Unless you're doing 3 to 5 deals a month, you really don't need the paid version consistently.
Yeah. When the call comes into our call systems, that is one thing that we haven't hit on yet. You do want to make sure that you have a call system where you can track your KPIs. And if you are sending out a code violation, you want one phone number. If you're sending out high equity, you want another phone number. If you are sending out probates, you want another phone number, so that you can see kind of what your return is, how many pieces you're mailing out in a year to all of these different leads and listsource. So when the call comes in, it's automatically going to dump in the seller's phone number here. You are going to need to type in their name and their email address and their address themselves. So when they call in, that's going to be the first thing that we ask for. What address are you calling about? What's your name? So that we can fill out all of this information. Because some phone numbers are linked up to other people's names, or if it's a second home, an inherited home, then that is not going to obviously show up on their bill with that phone number. The system then actually auto-populates the Google Maps. It'll pull in Zillow, Realtor.com, and other free websites that are linked up with that address. The next screen down is going to talk about, is it a hot lead, warm lead, cold lead, and what stage are you in? This is copies of Paul, so you can flag it if it needs to go onto Brittany's calendar of Brittany take over the listing, which is his wife, for the resale side of it. Are we going on an appointment? Oops, sorry guys. Hold on, how do I go backwards? Okay, hold on. Technical difficulties. Do we need to follow up? Things like that. So this is really great on keeping track of it. The other one thing that I really like about Podio system is I actually have it linked up to my Google calendars as well as Paul. So if I need Paul to go on an appointment, I can actually populate onto Paul's Google calendar where it'll remind him that that's what he's doing today and show up with the address and the appointment that he's going to. So all he has to do is click on the address button and it'll give him directions. Like I said, it'll tell you when the lead was created, when that first call came in, what the address is. This is obviously not the same address as the one before, where it's at. And then these are a sample of some of the contracts that we use. I don't know if anyone's looked at the Florida FAR Bar as is contract, but it's intense. And sitting in front of a seller that may have inherited a home, and explaining 13 pages of a whole bunch of legal jargon is hard. It's really hard to do. So we've condensed the purchase contract, which is what is on the left side of the screen, into 3 pages plus a signature page. That breaks it down into, who's paying for closing costs, because that's one of the big things on the FAR bar that nobody understands. We are closing on or before 45 days, what our inspection time period is. And the big thing is, especially if you're not working in the state of Florida or in our counties, make sure that you're finding a real estate attorney that works with investors, but that'll review these and make sure that there aren't any random city county ordinances that would apply to you guys that you want to make sure that you have cited. On the right side is a sample of our assignment contract. Some things that set it apart from other ones that I've seen is it actually allows you to reflect an agent's commission directly on the HUD. So you're not trying to wholesale a deal and then tell the agent, if there is an agent involved, that she needs to try to get paid from her investor out of pocket, and it's not reflected. And it makes it a lot more transparent. You're building trust with those agents and making them want to continue to bring them investors, because you're not putting a bunch of headaches on their head. Do you want to add anything, Paul?
Yeah, well, it's nice for them because they also get paid on the HUD, so it's not like they have to hide anything from the broker. The broker can get disclosed, and there's no addendums that they have to draw up or anything like that. So when this goes to closing, or to the closing company for the new buyer's information, that the agent's contact is on there, the agent's information is on there, and at the closing, the actual agent gets paid off the HUD like a normal transaction. So that's a lot. From what I've experienced with the agents, they like that a lot more, because a lot of times, you try and go back and forth to get addendums. The next thing you know, the agent possibly gets cut out of the deal. The wholesaler gets more money, and then the agent gets no money potentially because they didn't have everything in the right situation. So I love working with agents. They usually have the highest paying cash buyers, because most buyers aren't looking off market. They're mostly looking for properties that are off the MLS, and we get a deal for $70,000. Tell the agent, say, hey, add your commission or whatever you want to the property, and they add $5,000 for $70,000 property. They're happy as heck, because they just made $5,000 on a $70,000 property, and they wouldn't make that. They wouldn't even make that on a $100,000 property. They'd make almost half that. So
yeah. And building those relationships with agents are going to make them want to bring more investors back to you. So yeah. It just works a little bit easier. So here are some of the deals that we have actually worked on recently.
This one's actually in South Venice. It's a 3-1 with a 1-car garage with a full separate lot plus a 400 square foot efficiency. I contracted her for 70. It was a mess. She had every complication that you could ever imagine, between the ex-husband dying, him filing bankruptcy. It was just a mess. So we got it sorted out after about 3-4 months. I assigned it to the guy for $20,000. He's almost done with the entire rehab, and his main plan is to take the 311 and put a long-term tenant in there and take the 400 square foot efficiency and make that an Airbnb property. It's about a block and a half to the private boat ramp and the ferry. So he'll do very well on that. He'll probably be all in for about 160, 165 with the rehab for both properties.
Yeah.
This one here, I kept telling him to put it on Airbnb, and he didn't want to. He was going to sell it. And I'm like, listen, you're less than a half mile to Casey or Nokomis Beach. Put this up as Airbnb. And he put the sign in the yard to sell it for about a week. And then all of a sudden, on a Saturday morning, he starts messaging me, working. He buy furniture, and come to find out, he didn't know all the loopholes of Airbnb and put it on Airbnb. I think at like 11 o'clock on a Friday night, and by 9 a.m. he had 3 bookings for the next few weeks. So all day Saturday and Saturday morning until Saturday evening, including when the tenant got there, he's putting all the furniture together. They're scrambling to get all the stuff for him, and he gave the guy like a day and a half free and worked it out. And he's had it without COVID issues. Prior COVID, I believe he was booked 26 to 27 days a month, and just a little bit in between for the cleaning lady. I believe he's a little undervalued, but I want to say he's getting it $179 off season and $199 in season. It's a 221.5 with a above ground pool, but it's literally a 5-minute walk to the beach, and you can bike to the beach and it's right there. So
Yeah.
this one just sold, I believe, in the last few weeks. I contracted for 232. I signed it for 15,000, and I believe, or the rehab on it was, the original rehab was 32,000. We did the rehab on it, and then he had some complications with some drain pipes. I want to say that cost him about 10, between 8 and 10, and then it sold, I want to say, for 355-ish, 350, between 354 and 356. It just sold for about a month ago. So actually, the seller called me after he seen the pictures of it and was blown away how nice the property turned out, and was very thankful. So those are pretty much all straight cash transactions. The nice part with this is, you get to cherry pick what you want to do with each one, and however you want to structure it or try and structure it with the seller. I personally like trying to do creative financing because it gives you a lot more leverage and a lot more options. So it works the same way as doing cash, except you don't have to pay a ton of money out of pocket. So, and I can promise you, investors will love buying it with terms.
Yeah.
So owner financing, what is owner financing? Seller financing is basically a real estate agreement in which the seller handles the loan versus a national bank or a hard money lender. Instead of paying for the conventional bank and mortgage, you have make sure your credit is up to par. They usually want a typical W-2 job. A hard money lender is more asset based, but you're typically going to pay probably 2 and 10% or 3 and 12%, just depending on the lender. It's asset based, so they're not really worried about your credit. It's more worried about the house. But at the end of the day, you're still paying 3 points up front, which is 3% of the purchase price at closing to the lender, and then he's charging you between 10 and 12%. There are cheaper ones out there, but they still kind of go back on to your job and your credit and everything like that for the other banks that are a little less, or that are quote unquote hard money, but not really hard money. But with a seller, if I say, hey, I'll give you $10,000 down, will you hold the mortgage on this, and I'll give me a 2 or 3 year balloon or a 5 year balloon, whatever you guys work out. There's no credit, there's no nothing, and the seller already knows the house. They know you're going to fix up the house. So worst case scenario, they get $10,000 from you or $20,000 down. You start paying them a monthly payment, and if you give the house back, they get the money plus all the monthly payments and probably a nicer conditioned house. I mean, that's not the goal, but that's the only risk the seller has, is that they get the property back. But at the end of the day, they're getting a chunk of money up front and collecting a monthly payment from you in order to pay off that loan. So the nice part about that is you can wholesale a owner finance property the same way you can a cash deal, but you typically can make more money on the spreads, because at the end of the day, that buyer doesn't have to come out of pocket, say $100,000 for the property. He can come out of pocket $10,000 down for the owner, original contract to the owner at closing, and say $20,000 cheaper your assignment fee. So basically, you come out of pocket to buy that same $100,000 property with only $30,000. Or instead of paying the hard money lender 12%, you could pay the homeowner between 4 and 8%. So that 2 to 4% monthly payment on the actual note is a big difference every month.
Yeah.
So I love doing owner finance deals. They're a little harder to get in our market, but they're definitely out there. One of our guys has, I believe, 5 of them in the last 8 months.
Yeah.
So
He loves them. Yeah.
How do you convince a seller to accept your offer? You kind of really explain the win-win benefits of all of it. The nice part is the seller's not going to pay capital gains when they sell the house all up front. That's going to be spread out over the next couple of years. Now, if they need the money to go buy another property or something else, that will be a little bit of a challenge for them to do an owner finance deal with you. But if they're just taking that money from the sale and putting it in the bank, what's the bank going to pay them? They're not even going to pay them 0.5%. Where you can say, listen, I'll give you 6% on your money. You hold the note, and I'll pay you every month 6%. So you can also pay more money for the property because you're not coming out of pocket. And if you're going to hold it long term, then if you're paying an extra $10,000 or $15,000 on an owner finance deal for a 10-year note, it's okay to pay that a little bit more money, because over time it's going to come back and you'll have a wash. plus the monthly payments are going to go down a lot. So that's going to be extra money in your pocket compared to the actual upfront purchase price. I mean, some owners that understand it, they're going to say, yeah, I'll do it, but I want 20% down. Some will say, hey, I'll do it, but I want X amount down. But it's really whatever you guys agree to. So if the deal makes sense, bring in a partner to bring in, you know, $30,000 or $40,000 down payment and still buy the deal. Because at the end of the day, you control the asset and you can do whatever you want. At that point in time, you can fix it up for rehab and have less money in the property. You can have it for a rental. You can even move into the property. It's whatever you want to do is your choice at that point. And it's all done through the title company or closing attorney, the same way the regular transaction happens. The mortgage that you guys draw up is recorded online or at the courthouse. So, you know, it's a legal binding deal. It's you don't pay Bank of America, you're paying, you know, John Smith for the mortgage. That's the only difference. Another big thing is, you know, if a seller is adamant about paying or wanting a 180 purchase price and say the deal gets tight at 180, but you can still make money on the deal, offer them 180, but offer it with terms. Say, listen, I'll give you 10,000 down, let me fix up the property and resell it, and I'll cash you out in 8 to 12 months. I wouldn't really go under a 6-month term if you're going to do a flip, just because a typical flip is between 4 and 6 months from start to finish. If you have any hiccups, you know, you don't want to make the seller mad because, hey, it took 7 months instead of 6 months. So I always try, and even if you're borrowing hard money or getting a lender involved, I always try and get at least a 12-month term, just because stuff does happen and, you know, buyers do fall out. You can be a week from closing, and next thing you know, the buyer's deal went south and they can't get the loan anymore. So I always try and get that at least 12 months in there. But, you know, if someone's going to sell me a property and I can get into the property for $10,000 or $15,000 down and I'm paying a little bit more money for the purchase, I'm okay with it because I'm not coming out of pocket the whole $10,000 or $180,000. So what's my return on a $10,000 or $15,000 down payment? And I still made $20,000, $30,000 from that deal instead of paying $160 or $165. But yeah, that's extra money. But at the same time, you're still coming out of pocket. Or if you have to bring a hard money lender in, the money, you're going to lose money anyways on that deal.
Yeah. And if it makes sense where they own majority equity or they own it free and clear, it's an investment property, something like that, they're moving into a nursing home or into their kids, it can't hurt to ask, hey, would you consider? It's easy as that. Here are some owner finance deals that have been done.
Yep, this one was in Punta Gorda. I actually had to not force him, but I told him my only option to buy the property was through an owner finance deal because I couldn't get access to the property. He was in Maine. He had a tenant in there that he didn't really move in. The caregiver moved her daughter in, so I couldn't get access to the property. So my offer was $35,000 with a $5,000 or $500 down payment and $350 for the next 10 years. He was getting $500 for rent, but he kept getting notices in the mail for the liens from her not paying the water, and he was still responsible for the insurance and the taxes. So his only gripe was that he's collecting more money in rent. But when I broke it down, that's saying you don't have any insurance on the property. So if she burns the property down, you're out of everything, and you're paying your property taxes. So by the time I pay your property taxes and put insurance on the property, you're covered. It's a wash. And we did it. I want to say I held it for about 4 months. I was going to put a tenant in there and then decided to sell it because we could get more money for it than holding it. And I put on the MLS, I believe, for 80, and within 48 hours, I had a cash offer for 78,000. So.
Subject 2 deal.
Subject2, another good one. You got to be careful on the whole process of them. You want to work with a closing attorney that, you know, knows how to structure the paperwork and everything for them, but they do make great deals. I've even wholesaled a couple of them off, but whoever you're going to wholesale that property to on Subject2, you want to make sure you know that investor very well because you don't want to put this home seller in a bad situation with their mortgage being out on the line. Typically on Subject2 deals, they're usually going to come from a seller that's behind on payments or about to be behind, or someone that has lost a job and they know that they're going to be getting into a bad situation or possibly a death in the family. These are going to be more geared towards your pre-foreclosure or foreclosure process. and that's why they're going to be a little more okay with you taking on a subject to deal. I do have one that I wholesaled, but it was a weird situation. He was behind on his payments in the house in Sarasota. I wasn't trying to buy the house in Sarasota. I was trying to buy the house in Venice, and basically it worked out to where if we helped him fix up the house in Venice, he'd move to that one and let us buy this house on his Sarasota house in Subject 2.
I think we have pictures of that one.
Yeah, I believe so.
Oh. Okay, I don't know what just happened. 1 second, guys. So this slide is about tips. There we go. You want to negotiate to make the payments directly to the lender. You don't want to pay the seller and then have them pay. You can get into them making late payments. If they aren't paying the mortgage, then they probably need some money, and you don't necessarily want them, well, you don't want them to not pay the mortgage, especially if you're paying them. So you want to make sure that if you can pay the lender directly. Adding your LLC to the insurance as an insured is something else that you want to do. Take title control of the property so that you have control of it, and only wholesale these to people that you trust to make the payments, because it could damage the seller, and you don't want to build a bad reputation. We talked about it earlier about being ethical in the way that you do your business and construct your business.
This one we picked up in Clearwater. This was a high equity lead, but it turned out to be needing a probate and a little behind in payments. So it's a 211 block house. ARV is probably around 150, 160. It needs about $12,000 in repairs. The mortgage balance is between 60 and 80. We're waiting for a payoff now. Owner wants to walk away with $10,000 in their pocket, and then the payments are only $502 a month for principal and interest. This will rent all day long for $1,100 a month. So roughly about $24,000 in payments, or money out to the seller, the probate, the rehab, and then I think he's like a payment and a half behind on the mortgage right now. So this would produce about a $600 monthly cash flow. So Subject 2 does do pretty well once you can structure them and have the right deals come into play. Oh, here's the one. So this was a Subject 2 deal. He had this house in Sarasota, and he wanted to sell the house, or he didn't want to sell the house in Venice that we were actually targeting. So basically, I bought this one on Subject 2, the higher end neighborhood off of DeSoto Road by University Parkway. We bought it for $220. I assigned it to the investor for $20,000. He did $35,000 rehab, and he sold it for $347. And he used basically the Subject to existing loan at a 7% interest rate instead of going to a hard money lender. And basically, I came out of pocket right around $60,000 to make $72,000. So that's the nice upside about Subject 2.
I don't know what's going on with these slides.
Does anyone have any questions so far? We have a chat box on the right side that you can put messages into.
Yeah. So if you guys have questions, don't hesitate to post them. Place questions here. I know that we covered a lot of information. The next couple of slides are actually going to talk you through a few of our systems that are important as you get started. PropStream, we talked a lot about that. This is the alternative. Oh, shoot. Hold on 1 second. The alternative to the MLS. Okay, guys, I'm sorry. I will stop clicking the mouse. Trial.propstreampro.com/ppmp. It'll give you a 7-day free trial. If you want to test it out, see it, you'll have access to the app like we talked about for the driving for dollars. Like we talked about, you can pull list in it. You can pull skip trace your leads, which means finding the phone numbers, email addresses, and mailing addresses. You can look at national databases for comparables and off-market deals. You can pull buyers inside of this. You can target landlords. You can target flippers. There's a lot of different things. It was made specifically for investors. So it is a wonderful tool. trial.propstreampro.com/ppmp for that 7-day free trial. You want to test it out. On Carrot, these are websites. There are a few different platforms. If you are a realtor, they actually just created realtor pages as well. You can purchase one, or you can purchase them in threes, I believe. So you would have a buyer, a seller, and maybe a company website on there. It is built and developed with a lot of SEOs, which means that it shows up early on your Google searches. I don't necessarily understand how SEO works, but it does. So it means that when you search selling your house in Sarasota or need a flip, something like that, it'll show up earlier in those Google searches. It was created for investors, so they have blog posts and canned things that you can schedule out to continue to post engagement. And they have a system set up to where when somebody subscribes to one of your websites, they have automated emails that go back and forth that seem just like you're responding when you're not. So the goal of creating a real estate business, I'm sure for most of you, at least for me, is to have the freedom to do what you want, go where you want. And the more systems that you can set up and put into place that do all of these behind the scenes while you're looking at homes or sleeping or maybe doing the rehab if that's what you love, will only help you in your business to grow. YouTube. We talked a little bit about this with Jill talking about the evictions and what's going on. I know that Paul also mentioned Brandon, who is in Arkansas. He talked about how he grew his business to over 50 doors in the last year. That includes coronavirus. And he is, I believe, 25. So it's a really inspirational story. Those recordings are all on our YouTube channel. If you just search for REI Live SRQ or go to youtube.com/REI Live SRQ, you'll be able to see all of those videos that we have put out recently. And I would say that by the end of this week, I would say probably by Friday, I will have this video edited and uploaded as well, if you want to go back and re-listen to it. So if you are looking for upcoming classes, if you're looking for other vendors or partners, or you didn't grab a screenshot of one of the places that we talked about a minute ago, go to our website, reilivesrq.com. There are all of our partners and vendors with all the discounted links or links directly to their website. On that page, we have REI Lab gear, flipping paper gear, gratitude gear, that was hard to say. There's also a link to our YouTube channel on there, our online course, everything that you could need is on there. So definitely go check that out. And I know that we've shared a couple times our Facebook and Instagram tags. If you guys have success and find success, we would love for you guys to tag us in it. We love seeing deals come together.